just also wanted to comment on the site itself. It is on a corner, so we basically have two frontages. I did review all the emails and any comments that everybody sent in, and you know, we both really appreciated the feedback, so we do want to try to address some of those comments as well. And I think it's always a bit confusing when you're looking at these properties. North Broadway has 100-foot right-of-way. So our property line is actually, I think I looked, almost 25 feet from the road itself. That's our property line. Okay? And the property of Milton, it has a 60-foot right-of-way. There was a lot of concern, you know, about narrowing the property. So our property line, again, from the road on Milton is about 17 foot from the edge of the paving. So there is plenty of road and width for the city if they ever want to expand in the future. Who knows if they will, but there is plenty of width for that. So I just wanted to reassure on that context. We did ask for setback variances, and really those building setback variances, you really want those. You know, we do that because we want our house to align with which is existing in the neighborhood. So the house that we're asking for a variance on North Broadway, because we want it to align with the houses next door. Because, you know, we think it would look odd if it doesn't. And again, on Milton, you know, there's actually a house on Milton that's about 1 foot from the property line directly south of our parcel. So when we look at our setbacks, we're not just winging it. You know, we're looking at the context of neighborhood and saying, what do we think would be appropriate for the fabric of the neighborhood? So that's how we place the houses as we did. There are a lot, you know, there's of course the use variances. You know, and again, here's another one. You're only allowed to, you have to have a 5,000 square foot lot in Clintonville to build a single family home on. There's not that many lots in Clintonville that are 5,000 square feet either. So some of these things, even though it's existing, the city of Columbus asks us to get variances for them for existing conditions. So that's what a lot of these we are dealing with. So I'm gonna let Liz talk a little bit about the design and kind of the design intent. And then I think if we have more specific questions on the variances, I'll address those. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Hello, everybody. And also, hello, everybody. As Julie mentioned, I am an architect, and I've done a number of these infill lots, a lot of them on 40 or even 37-foot lots. And I've been in the practice for a long time. One of my personal pet peeves about architects is when they don't go to the site and really look at everything that's there, what she was talking about. It really is important to understand the immediate context as well as the general context to make good design decisions, and that's what I'm trying to do, including about the safety issue, which I very much appreciate. We bike, my partner Victor, we bike up the Greenway as well as around different places in Columbus and bike there and kind of get that. I'm actually going to just, I guess, flip to the elevations. I mean, some things.
And it's in your packet.
Yes,
Okay.
everybody should have a copy.
You should point it that way so they can see, because we can see.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll try to do it all if I can. So Victor actually went out and took pictures of every single house within a 2-block radius to really kind of understand what the architecture is around here. And it's pretty eclectic. There's single families, double, 2 stories, single stories, doubles, carriage homes, all kinds of different things in the immediate area. Some other small format, 3, 4 families. So thinking about what would be appropriate for the neighborhood, I guess I would say really we're looking for, I don't know, there's a lot of single family homes already, and I know that there's a conversation going on in Clintonville, and I also read all the comments about what's appropriate on this site. Missing middle, that housing, this kind of housing is the least the kind of housing there is in all of Central Ohio, actually. And so I would feel good about providing more of that. It's not that we couldn't build a single family home. I suppose we could. It would be an expensive home and kind of one more of what there already is a lot of. And it's anyway. So we kind of took the lot to say, what can it accommodate, and what can it accommodate in a way that's sort of similar to what's here already. The basic development pattern in Clintonville, as well as some other neighborhoods like this, is a home in the middle, yard in between, garage at the back, so that you get that kind of consistent presentation facing the roads, as well as consistent air and light where the backyards line up, and then the alley serves the garages. So it's very important to us, looking at the safety issue on Milton, that none of the garages, there was no traffic that needed to go in and out of, a curb cut on Milton. That would have been basically, I would say, impossible. But the existing traffic pattern for people to turn down the alley to get their garages is familiar. So it doesn't introduce any kind of new complexity. People kind of understand that already. So we made sure to have all the garages off of Milton. We went and looked at sort of the sizes of the doubles in the area and provided a design that's basically the same size as the other doubles in the area. And the other thing I wanted to just point out, because I know people are sensitive about this, they notice it, is that there's really very different sizes of homes and doubles and all kinds of things in the area. This double here on the end, which is 1 block away, is really just about exactly the same size as what we're proposing, to give you a sense. So the front, we have open front porches facing North Broadway, very, very much the same as all the other similar doubles in the area. It actually looks a little bigger than it is because it's got how we're proposing cross gables kind of set back in the middle of the house to provide some visual interest along the side of the home. And when we started looking at Milton Avenue, it's got just the one home nearby that faces Milton. So we start to think about, can there be a way to give that street a little bit more presence, more of a streetscape, if you will. So, introduce a couple of additional massing elements that are of a similar scale, so that you get sort of 3 things on that road, and 3s make a nice composition often. So that was something to do with why we elected that particular kind of a design there. And then beyond that, we're proposing to use materials that will break down the scale. All the porch lines up with the other porches nearby, similar height off the ground. If you look at the other elevation, you can see that the windows kind of line up, the doors line up. The roof is a little taller because it's a double, so it's a little wider, so the roof gets a little taller, but consistent with the other doubles in the area. We tried to detail the home in a similar fashion as other homes in the area, and just create what would be 3 nice places for people to live.
I just think it's important to understand, because we're on 2 streets, having the resident that faces Milton, I think was an important part of the design process. And that's the difference on a corner lot versus, an interior lot, to have that experience.
I just wanted to say one more thing, I guess, about the exact placement of the home, and how we get to maybe specific variances, if you will. The width of the house is kind of conditioned on the width of the bedrooms on the upstairs and the hallways when you're doing a double. Like, you gotta have a minimum size of room and a minimum size of hallway, and for the minimum size of house. Wanted to maintain typical distances from the interior lot line and take the variance is more so out of the side that faces the street, because that's the way to really respect what would be anticipated for the neighboring house. We have that ability with the corner lot, so that's what we did. Beyond that, we're not showing a sidewalk. I will say, I think there should be no parking along that block. I don't know why there's not.
I think the city of Columbus, is going to require us to put a sidewalk in at Milton. They're also going to require us to update the ramp at that corner to an ADA ramp, and across the street. They require that as part of this. It's a little bit of the sidewalk to nowhere, but it's what's required for every time you do a project, they make you put that sidewalk in. We are also required, the city of Columbus is very strict on drainage and storm drainage and how we handle all of that. I know that was some concerns from some of the people. Unlike many of the homes in the area, which just, come down on specs, splash box, and daylight, all our downspouts have to be directed to an underground drainage system to the street. The same with any paving, we'll put in yard drains, etc. That's all very much dictated by the city of Columbus and what they're going to require us to do. So I can pretty much assure you, they're very strict on it, so we haven't had real issues with drainage just because of that, so.
Yeah. And they, mentioned a possibility of turning the paving for the second cars into permeable, but which would be totally fine with.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, this is, I would just say this is a study in what the lot would need to be shaped like, if you will, to accommodate homes of this type. So it's, I don't, we can make some amendments, we can, tweak some things if it matters, but I think the basic conversation when I was gleaning from the comments was whether a single family home is what the community feels like is the right thing to do here, or a multi-family home. I don't know that we're totally married to any solution, honestly. Appreciate your time and your comments.
Thank you. Now we'll go to questions from the committee.
Did you want to do the?
Oh, it's a commissioner. Is Brian here? I didn't think he was here. Okay.
So you said you would be agreeable to having a permeable parking area?
Absolutely.
That would be
Actually, wasn't sure that it was allowed. I'm more than happy to do that.
okay, so we can make that a condition?
Yeah.
Okay, so how would you respond to the situation of, I might have my property right next to you, and I bought it as knowing that property is R3, and you bought this property knowing it's R3. How do you respond to that neighbor?
I would say, first of all, when Columbus rezoned everything, they just arbitrarily rezoned everything as R3. And I've asked them this question, because I've had duplexes, and I said, it's zoned R3, why didn't you zone that R4 or R2F, which allows for a double? And they said, we don't do spot zoning. We just figure, we're just gonna do it all R3 and look at it. I think anytime you buy in a neighborhood, that in an urban neighborhood such as this, you need to understand that, something could be developed on that parcel. We think from a streetscape standpoint and looking at the street that it's very compatible with the house next door. And we've been very careful to give wide side yards to that house as well. We think it's going to enhance their land value. We think it's going to be a positive for the neighborhood, and we would hope they would think so as well. You see a lot of these projects where, the developers will come in and build 3 foot from the property line. That was not something that Liz wanted to do. She was very careful about respecting, the neighbors and the setbacks and where they have windows and things like that. So.
Go ahead.
I would just say that also that when new homes are constructed in older neighborhoods like this, it actually helps everybody's valuations, because it becomes a comp that is used. I mean, if you're gonna sell right away, it would become a comp that would be used and generally helps.
Had you given much thought to just a duplex?
I have given thought to a duplex. I think we would do
I
it.
guess I'm assuming you wouldn't need quite the number of variances if it were just a duplex, so I was just wondering if you consider.
It surprisingly only eliminates a couple, honestly, just because of the zoning codes.
Okay, density wise, I guess.
Yeah.
Had you given thought to that?
I drew it that way, honestly, and I like urban neighborhoods. And they're created by the houses that are there, the structures that are there, not empty land. I mean, obviously, you need some parkland and all that stuff, but the neighborhood itself was created by all the houses. And drawing the streetscape, I liked it better with the carriage house. I mean, that's just me, and I don't live here.
I do live in the neighborhood. I think the thing that's so unique about this property is it's on 2 streets. So I thought she was very clever in addressing both streets in a different way. And to me, that's enhances.
And what would you say hardship is? That because this variance goes with the property, it's forever,
Sure.
and so there's supposed to be some sort of.
I just think in and of itself, a corner lot and its inherent characteristics is a hardship. Frankly, every time you have to build in these, neighborhoods, is a hardship because the zoning code doesn't really address it. So for me, I like to evaluate what is appropriate for the neighborhood and what seems really the right thing to do. And you know, the fact that the zoning code doesn't allow for flexibility to do that, I think in and of itself is a hardship.
Well, that's what a variance is
Yeah,
for, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess I'm just trying to zone in
Sure.
on what,
Yeah, I think
Large
the
actual
corner,
hardship is-
the fact that we're fronting two streets and we have large setbacks, I think is a big part of it.
thank you.
It's, the projects that you've done in other communities, and I understand those communities where, you know, you do have those converted garages into housing, stuff like that, the density is much more. In Clintonville, I think there's been a perception that, you know, a garage should be a garage, should be a garage. And you shouldn't have any living space above it. And we get challenged with that a lot, and it's usually turned down. Have you thought about reducing the size of the garage instead of it being a 2-bedroom carriage house? What about a 1-bedroom efficiency and lowering the height of it? Have you considered that?
We have, and I think that, you know, that's a possibility too. I guess one of the things I wasn't sure about, what would be preferred, if you will, in that situation, is if you then serve that with 1 car space or 2? With a 1
I
bedroom?
think it's more the height.
Well, yeah, so I'm happy to talk about that. I don't know that we're opposed to that. I was sort of looking at the scale of the home to the south and wanted to create something that was sort of similar scale so that it could be a pair, if you will, which is, it started off as a single story above.
Right.
And I drew that and like, what if I did this? So that's where we landed for tonight, but
It's
we'd
very
be open
cool
to it.
looking, and I think it would be more, I think we would see it more in different areas such as Italian Village, Victorian Village, German Village, stuff like that, more denser neighborhoods. And, okay, so thank you on that. And just on that garage part, I'm looking at this on variance, and I'm trying to understand to allow a building setback of 6 feet in lieu of the required 10 feet along Milton. Could you explain that to me? I don't know what that is.
Well, it's because we basically have 2 fronts. It's not a side yard setback on Milton, it's a front yard setback. So that's why they required,
What is the front of the house of the garage,
Milton.
of the carriage house? So
Milton.
the front is Milton.
Mhm.
For both, right?
No, the main house, the front would be North
Oh,
Broadway.
okay, sorry.
But I try to explain it logically, but it doesn't, it's not super logical, I'll be honest. But the North Broadway house does have a front along Milton, but they calculate it as side yard setbacks. However, it's a different setback than the typical side yard setback because it's fronting a street, if that makes sense.
Okay, I understand that, thank you for clarifying that. But also too, because it is a garage and you're coming off an alley, isn't there a turning radius that's required to get into the garage, and is that being met?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We're required to have 20 feet from the back side of the alley to the garage door. She actually has more than that.
Okay,
And I just want to comment, that house that's right behind us actually is basically a carriage house with a garage on the first floor and a unit above. I have a friend who used to live there, so I'm very familiar with that property,
it's
so
a very unique property
it is
to
very,
this community.
very unique,
We're lucky to have it.
yeah.
A similar question, how does a car get to the concrete parking pads? Do you pull through the garage, or how does it
Pull
car?
through the garage.
Okay.
We used to provide those additional parking spaces in front of the garage, you know, on the alley. City planning doesn't want us to do that. They really emphasize the streetscape of the alley and the setback of the alley, so they would prefer that we pull through and utilize the spaces. We briefly discussed coming in off of Milton to access those, but we didn't feel like it was an appropriate move from a traffic standpoint. I've done a few other projects like this where you have those spaces, and actually seems to work pretty well for most of the residents.
And there's no basement for the house?
On the back house, no.
How about the front house?
If you decide,
Yeah, I haven't totally decided, if there would be a basement, probably just a partial basement.
it's a question that comes up a lot right now, cost.
Yeah.
Basement service contract.
So what, how many of these if you were to, could you put a single family house here without a variance?
I don't believe so, no.
You explain why.
Well, because, lot width doesn't meet code. I will say, the city of Columbus has ruled inconsistently on that question for existing conditions and whether they require variance or not. I've had them require it, I've had them not require it, if the existing conditions. I mean, I would say you would absolutely want a variance for the setback off of North Broadway because it'll look odd if you don't align with the other houses. So, you know, if anyone were purchasing this and saying, can I buy this without variances, I would say not and have it look right for a single family.
But you'd have to put it further back. from the
Yeah,
street.
you wanna match what's the existing setback conditions.
By the way, I wasn't smiling and laughing at you, I was smiling
Oh,
and
no.
laughing at the city because we've all heard them go back and forth on things too. So,
We're hoping the new zoning code's gonna be a lot clearer and easier to deal with, keeping our fingers crossed.
The site distance, did you get any city feedback on that? Like,
I'm sorry, I couldn't
did
hear you.
traffic review the site distance or was there any feedback?
Traffic did not have any comments, we did get our first it goes out to all the departments, if they have comments. The only comment I got from traffic was a sidewalk along Milton. They typically are not, when we have the required parking and it's accessible off an alley, you're typically not gonna get any comments from traffic.
what's the distance curb to proposed house on both Milton and Morris
Well, I know the distance, and you can try out.
Drive? Not right of way, just to get, because the right of way word says,
From the front, from the edge of the road, which is probably the edge of the curb, to the property line in the front is 24.6. And then how far is it off the front?
23.
It's almost 40 feet back, more than that.
47.
47 feet off of North Broadway.
so
And then off of Milton, it is 17 feet from the road. I don't think there's a curb along Milton per se, but let's pretend there is. 17 feet to the property line, and then how much to the setback?
For the main home, most of it is 7 feet, that little, where it's
Yeah.
kind of jutting out to become the vertical element, that's 6 feet just right there.
It's about 24 feet. So,
so 47 feet from West North Broadway.
yeah, and it's quite a bit
Yeah.
back, isn't
No,
it?
yeah. I'm trying to translate these into terms that people understand, because no one understands right of way off the top of their head.
Well, everyone is always surprised when I work with them where the property line is relative to the city takes quite a bit of that right away.
Can you tell me more about the vision triangle?
So typically in situations like this, so the city, when they ask us to calculate vision triangle, you have to calculate it from the property line itself. So you take, which is not really relative to where the actual road is, especially in a situation like this where we're, so far from the edge of the road. So it would make more sense to me that the vision triangle should be, where the road is, but that's not the case. That's where the property line is. So the vision triangle just clips a small portion of a front porch. So we really like that porch going across the front. We want to align with the existing house. Since the right of way is so wide, 100 feet and 60 feet, typically in those situations, City of Columbus hasn't had an issue with the vision triangle variance. So we went with aesthetics on that one, to be honest.
What kind of rent will you charge when you carry out?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What kind of rent will it be?
What kind of rent, do you know? That's a tough one right now.
I don't even know, it might depend on how big it is.
Yeah.
We honestly, we own one condo, we bought when our son was in Ohio State, down on Doris, so in the neighborhood. We've owned for 5 or 6 years, maybe. That condo is 2-bedroom condo, runs for $12.50. And I think that's sort of average, and what you need to do, I don't know exactly, what it would rent for. I do know, a friend of ours, is an advocate, you guys, I don't know if you've heard of this organization called Move to Prosper. They're always looking for 2 bedrooms, is the other reason I thought, maybe that carriage house might be interesting. The doubles are too big, they're 3 bedrooms, they're looking for 2 bedrooms, and I thought that might be an opportunity to participate in that, with that organization for that particular home. Also, it's a safe house, which I was a single mom for a long time before I met this wonderful man. Anyway, and for me, like a home like that carriage home is nice because you can pull into the garage and go right into your unit, so you're safe all the time. So just a thought.
I had a question. I think it's the variance number 8. I thought you had mentioned you pushed the setbacks to Milton, but did I remember number 8 correctly that there is a setback variance on the west property line?
Those are for the back building, those variances. And that was to allow us to get the required parking. And, typically we find in those alley setbacks that the buildings are a little close to the property line, and we can feel like we can infringe a little bit more because we're not right next to someone's house, someone's windows. For us, we thought getting the parking was a priority.
So, being a commissioner for a long time and on this committee and also a real estate broker, I had to be nosy and look at how it was presented online and what kind of information the listing agent gave. And she had an attachment and was marketing it as a single family lot, right, or ideal for a single family home. And in Columbus, with my experience, if a property has a parcel number, even if it's less than 50 feet, you can build on it without a variance. But you can only build what it's zoned for, which is a single family home. So every point that she had in her attachment kind of focused on building a single family home, disclosing the 35-foot height thing, the 10-foot clear vision triangle, staying 3 feet off the property line. So all the things that we deal with all the time. Where the garage should be, the height of the garage being only 15 feet. We're not used to giving variances for habitable spaces. We've done them for hobby rooms and all kinds of things. But looking at the plat, and it's a 0.13 acre lot. So 3 residents, maybe 6 residents if there's 2 per each unit, and maybe 6 cars. That seems like a lot of people coming and going from that particular location with the bike trail going down there and that extremely busy intersection and 20,000 cars a day going down West North Broadway towards the hospital. But that's my only comment. I'm all for infill development. We've certainly had a lot in Clintonville, but 1.3 acres is just a really small lot.
I did read that sheet. I just, again, to me, it's what we feel the neighborhood needs and what we feel is appropriate for a specific setting. I just think this is a little bit, if this was an interior lot, I would feel differently about it. Yeah. Because it's a corner and it has that carriage house right behind it, I feel like there can be a little more creativity.
Well, I have a corner lot, and a 1918 house, and I don't think my neighbors would be thrilled if I tore down my garage and tried to get a permit for a carriage house with a garage with an apartment over it. They just would not be happy. Even if I made it really cute, and your drawings are darling. I mean, I think they're very cute, and it certainly really fits into the neighborhood architecturally. It just seems so very tight.
One of the things that I think about a lot really is that we've lived in house-wise three different houses over 25 years. Because people don't stay in houses all that long on average, like any individual might. But like if you look at, so Clintonville is so lovely because it has developed over a long time. There's a lot of different people who lived in probably most of the people's houses in this room have different owners over time. The next owners wouldn't know any different configuration, which is why when I look at doing infill lots like this, I kind of look at it in terms of the fabric versus specific impacts on specific owners. I know it sounds a little bit rough, but what I mean is to really like provide for the future of the neighborhood in a way that is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. So from that perspective, it seems like positive. I actually think again it will improve the value of the carriage home to the south, because it will create a new value for a comparable home nearby, that can elevate property values around it.
I'm not sure I'd agree with that, but I can see, I know the cost of new construction is very expensive. I can see how you probably have at least $400 to $450 per unit in, that construction. So,
I mean, that is an issue now, just pricing is going through the
pricing
roof
is
and
crazy. Yeah.
that's why it's so hard to calculate rent,
So I'm not seeing it being affordable housing, of which we've had quite a bit built. And we did the workforce housing, that was a home port project at the end of Graceland Shopping Center. There's 300 units going up on Sinclair Road that are gonna rent for $400 or $450 a month. So the people that are the experts in affordable housing, they're here and they're doing things.
Yeah.
So
we're just hoping it's more entry level, somebody who
yeah,
can't afford,
right.
to spend 500, they love Clintonville like I do, but can't afford, the pricing. I mean, it's, so we're just,
Yeah,
Trying
your
to give a little bit
typical
of variety.
Broadway houses, West North Broadway is $400 to $450-ish.
and that's a good reach for somebody who, trying to get into Clintonville with their first home, so.
So in
We
terms
just
of,
feel like there's a need there, the conduits, whoever, there's a need that we could address with this.
I guess in terms of affordability, you mean that more in a sense, more affordable than a single family home,
Yes,
and not necessarily in a type of rent structure.
yes.
You're using affordable not in the technical sense that housing advocates uses.
I work in
Housing
a,
advocates, it's 150,000 a unit, that's affordable, but that seems almost impossible unless it's a high rise.
it's tough, and
Difference of the 1 foot, you said, that's only for the parking spot?
yes.
So it's not a structure that's
No,
1
it's
foot.
just,
Well, on the carriage house, there is, so the normal garage is supposed to be 3 feet away from an interior lot line, so that's kind of where we started with where this, carriage house is proposed. And then you've got sizes of stalls that have to be met, so they're minimum every time, and then a stair up to the carriage house, minimum. That's as small as it can be side to side to be able to then get up stairs. So the 1 foot is on Milton, just at the carriage house.
which is similar to the house that's directly south of that, that's pretty much on the property line.
So this lot is zoned R3, which is suitable for single family housing only.
Correct.
You claim that putting a duplex and a carriage house here is consistent with other use in the neighborhood. I walked today Brighton, on the length of Brighton from High Street to the river, there are 5 duplexes. On North Broadway, there are slightly more, but it comes in at, I think it was 11 or 12 duplexes or multi-units on North Broadway, on the south and north side. The bulk of those multi-units are on the north side, close to the Kroger, just to the west of Kroger. How do you claim that this, putting 3 units on this lot, tripling the density is consistent with the rest of the neighborhood when the bulk of the rest of the immediate vicinity is single family housing?
The whole quadrants are, I read all of the community plans, and tried to understand the aims and existing conditions and goals, and really the quadrant that is, bounded by North Broadway on the north and High Street on the east, and the river south is pretty mixed, between single family homes and small format, this missing middle small format, housing. So broadly in the region, it's very consistent, overall it becomes part of that fabric and is just
So I
part of
think-
a similar neighborhood.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is it's difficult to compare it to anything south of Delhi, because south of Delhi, the zoning is R2F, which allows for duplexes. So the zoning
Yeah.
changes there. So once you get north of Delhi, the zoning changes to R3 with some other small mixes of R4 in there, I believe, but that's pockets. So the comparison to anything south of Delhi is not a one-to-one comparison.
I will say there's 3 kind of arts and craft bungalows, they're all duplexes, so I got those.
They're condos.
Yeah, I did those many years ago, with the guy who lived in the building next to this.
And those are the 3 that are
and so we
right in the
rezoned
intersection
it.
of Milton right
Yeah,
there.
and so we did, and something like that, we rezoned it. And that's why it's now R2F, but it was originally R3.
Did you consider rezoning this?
In terms of rezoning, we do with the City of Columbus request. They are starting to move away from spot rezoning unless the use is just, so far off. So they did not recommend rezoning on this. I do it, but in this case, they just didn't want us to, so.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Okay, sorry.
Just one other comment. I really want to emphasize that we brought the project that we did tonight to show you what it would look like to do a 3-family on this lot. We're not married to it, it's an offer, we're willing to, it's a bigger investment for us, we're not developers, we're just people. We own a house and we own 1 condo because we bought it when our kid was in college here, so we're not developers. But we've got 2 other kids who are in college now, and my older son who's 35, and they are struggling with economics these days. Rent, looking at my 35-year-old looking for a house, very expensive. And so, thinking about, I don't know, we'd be willing to build a single family home on here if that's really what you want. It just, I'm sensitive right now to the struggles that my kids and my kids' friends are all having with their housing. And so, this is an opportunity, I guess. It's not that we're saying we have to do this. All right?
Thank you. Okay, now we're gonna keep folks to 2 minutes each so that we can give everyone a reasonable chance to talk. They won't interrupt you, please don't interrupt each other, but we're gonna be taking notes. So I'll start over here and we can go back around, how about that? Raise your hand if you want to start. Okay, so Mary, introduce yourself and where you live and then.
Mary Rogers, 214 East North Broadway. I'm the president of the North Broadway Street Association, which covers the street from the river to the railroad. And we appreciate all of the effort that you've put into this plan, but we would prefer that you have a single family home with a 15-foot tall garage. We think that is what is appropriate for West North Broadway, both historically and into the future. No questions.
No question. Okay, you said.
Hi, my name is Ben Leland. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I lived in Clintonville virtually my entire life. I was born here. I attended Clinton Elementary School right across the street. I went to Dominion Middle School back when it was located on Dominion. I went to high school over in Columbus Alternative High School right across the freeway. 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's degree from OSU. I work at OSU as a grants administrator. My family lives in the area. I'm a full-on local yokel, so to speak. I love living in this community. I'm a regular donor to CRC. I help run the Clintonville area progressives. I love being able to walk to institutions like the Clintonville Farmers Market, to Wylands, and to this meeting today. To be blunt, housing like this duplex house proposal will allow me to stay in this community. I can't afford a big single-family house. I'm a single-income earner who works in public education, and the steadily increasing real estate prices in Clintonville threaten to price me out of the community that raised me entirely. We need more housing supply in Clintonville, especially of this variety. I'm sensitive to the concerns expressed by other residents about safety at this intersection, particularly with regards to the Olentangy Bike Trail, and would enthusiastically support additional measures taken by the city to make cycling, walking, and driving in this area safer. I don't think that better road design and this project are mutually exclusive. I think we can have both. Additionally, the fact that this project is being built on an empty lot means no people are being displaced, no buildings of any historical value are being lost, and no housing of any utility is being removed. So please consider approving this proposal for new housing in Clintonville so that this townie can continue to live here and try to give back to the community that has invested so much in me. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, you don't have to give your precise street address, just the street you live on.
I live on Indian Knoll Ave.
Okay, no, and I'd say since we're on YouTube, that's fine. The street is fine, okay.
Well, as long as we're talking about costs, and the cost of double.
It's Carol.
Yeah,
On
formerly
East
North Broadway, used to be head of the Street Association, but I lived in Clintonville for 40 years. I couldn't afford a single family house in Clintonville. Interest rates were 14 3/4. So we bought a double, and we lived in half, and we rented the other half, and we roofed it ourselves, and we repainted ourselves, and we learned how to lease it out, and that's what we did. And what I'm saying today, in this situation, this comment that there's all these $750,000 houses is a gratuitous statement and untrue. There's not a house that has sold anywhere near $750,000 on West North Broadway. It's a single family lot, and to build any kind of double there at 2,400 square feet, 1,200 a side, at 300 foot, is $750,000. And then you go ahead and you build a carriage house of 1,000 square feet, you're up to $1 million, plus your lot price, you're up to $1.2 million. You haven't created affordability for anybody, not for this young man over here, not for me, when I couldn't afford a house. You haven't done that at all. What you've done is you have created a challenge for yourselves because you bought, frankly, a lot for $144,000. That's a pig in a poke, and the highest and best use, as far as I'm concerned, is a stop off for the bike path. But that's not what happened. So you've got the lot, and now you're trying to figure out how to recoup your investment. I don't blame you. I understand. I'm an investor, but I don't think this is the way to do it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jane. I live on Weber Road. I am unequivocally in support of this project. I think that we need more kinds of these projects in this neighborhood to allow for more families to live here. I love your comments about making a 2-bedroom carriage house so that it's not just, it can be a home for, a small family. It can be a bunch of different things. I am unequivocally in support of this. This is the kind of missing middle housing that we need in Clintonville and in Columbus in general. I think it would fit perfectly into the neighborhood. There are lots of doubles and quad housing that are available in Clintonville, and we need more of them to infill that. We also need 5/1s and projects like the Ave and like the Deco, but we need projects like this so that there are 3 families living on one lot so that we can grow Columbus. Is the future of Columbus, the future of Clintonville, adding more families in. I also went to Clinton Elementary. I went to Clinton and I went to Whetstone. So I'm from this neighborhood, and I don't think this would be at all out of place. And I really love all of your comments about how you made it fit into the neighborhood and had a front porch. And I really like that. I think it would fit perfectly in the neighborhood, and I'm unequivocally in support. And I think that people need to hear voices like mine.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I'll get you next.
My name is Ben Keith. I'm the zoning committee co-chair for the North Linden Area Commission. I live on Audubon Road over in North Linden, just the other side of 71. And I came tonight to provide a little bit of context, I think, which is necessary for this proposal. There were some questions from the committee about hardships, and how that ties into this request for the variances for the lot size specifically. This lot is 40 feet wide. So is every other lot, with the exception of 3, on North Broadway between the river and I believe the cross street is Hennepin. There is a petition that was sent around collecting signatures from nearby residents all on North Broadway or on Brighton. They were opposed to it, saying that the lot was too dense, that it was too small. Every single person who signed that listed an address for a house that was built on a 40-foot wide lot. There are a lot of duplexes on North Broadway between the river and Hennepin. Those are duplexes. They're built on 40-foot lots. So the idea that these duplexes are not consistent with the neighborhood character is in fact ahistorical. There are existing duplexes in this neighborhood which have that sort of density. But just down Milton, 400 feet away, there are a number of apartment blocks which have 6 units of housing in a lot just as big as this apartment complex. Well, just as big as this house and carriage house. 6 units in the same size lot is also within the neighborhood character. And we also talk about, why is there this mismatch between the zoning code and the lot size? That is because the zoning code was imposed in the 50s. These lots were platted out in the 1800s. The city's zoning code was not written with this neighborhood in mind. It wasn't written with Clintonville in mind. It wasn't written with the area, with the university area in mind. It wasn't written with North or South Linden in mind. Most of the houses today in Columbus, if you wanted to build them, you would not be able to build them under the current zoning code. And that includes every house that someone who signed petition opposing this says is too dense. So that's the nature of the hardship. The zoning code doesn't match the lot sizes on the ground. But I'm going to make this as quick as I can. The city is updating its zoning code to make denser housing possible on arterial streets. That includes North Broadway. So if this house doesn't get built, some developer may come along in 5 to 10 years and build a 5/1 on this lot. And the city is also working to permit accessory dwelling units, apartments over garages. That's, the Area Commission and this committee have a great opportunity to show what is an appropriate sort of accessory dwelling unit for this neighborhood.
And what was your name again?
My name is Ben Keith. I'm the zoning committee co-chair for the North Linden Area Commission.
And what street did you live on?
Audubon Road.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Stan Heinz. I live on North Fork, so like a little bit away, but I know the neighborhood well. And just for perspective, the house I'm in is on a 35-foot lot, so it's narrower than this. But I wanted to say that I'm absolutely in favor of this because there are definitely similar houses around. The duplexes have been mentioned, the higher units have been mentioned. In particular because the zoning code was imposed later. So you couldn't build Clintonville today as it stands today. Like basically you have to require the zoning variances to build it as it is. So that's why we are here. The next thing is, for me it's kind of, do you want this infill and a little bit more dense neighborhoods, or do you want people to move out to the suburbs and create bigger roads through Clintonville, which is also what you don't want. You don't want the traffic. You want the neighborhoods that are nice, that are walkable, that are where things are close, where you have a Kroger around. That's what you want. You don't want the big roads. And the other thing, I think you raised that question with the traffic on Milton. According to the MORPC, there's 2,600 cars a day that go on Milton. So you have 6 cars that go in and out, I don't know, let's say 2 or 3 times a day. I think that makes no difference. Because
20,000 on Broadway though.
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
okay,
but
let's-
that makes even less of a difference.
Okay, we have our chance to make points. This is their chance to make points.
So like, it's,
Well, I just want to put the numbers in perspective.
yeah, sure, but that's
It's a
like you have
corner lot.
a factor
Okay.
of 10
Yeah.
to North Broadway. So like,
And what is the traffic
Okay,
on your street?
it's North Fork, it's high traffic, and close to North Fork and Hudson. So it's 10,000 or
But
15,000
not
a day.
nearby,
So I know the
so-
traffic.
Okay, it's all right,
Yeah.
fine. You're entitled to your opinion.
Well,
Okay,
I'm
may
trying to help
continue. You may continue. Go ahead and continue.
I'm done.
Oh.
That's what I had to say. Thank
I
you.
want to make sure. Okay, next. We're going to stay on this side unless we get, yes, in the Maria.
Yeah, I'm Kristen. I live on North Broadway. It's clear the Clintonville Area Commission is committed to the preservation of the values of our community, the people who live around this lot. These proposed zoning variances do not match that commitment. The council's variance application under the statement of hardship provides the city council to grant zoning variances under a set of conditions. None of these have been met. There are no hardships associated with 201 West North Broadway property pertaining to the things listed on this hardship section if the lot is used as it was zoned as R3 single family residence. Yes, it is a narrow lot and the community is fine with that. The variances being requested are solely in order to squeeze 3 residences and 6 parking spots onto a small single family lot. The council's variance application under its statement of hardship provides the city council to grant zoning variances if they will not seriously affect any adjoining property or the general welfare. The proposal will negatively impact adjoining properties. This has been outlined in the letters. Things that were listed were green space, water runoff, traffic, parking, heat, noise, privacy, enjoyment, and above all else, safety. And it does create a significant risk to general welfare. All the neighbors around the block that signed the letter and provided other letters have noted there's many bikers, runners, walkers, drivers. There's a bus stop less than a block away that all the kids get off on. EMS is constantly going through that intersection, and we have established there's heavy traffic. I sincerely want to thank the committee for their time, transparency, thoughtfulness, and most importantly for caring for Clintonville. I'd like to take one moment to address what has been said earlier, that you're talking about being consistent with the character. You've been thoughtful about the neighbors, having things line up. This is not consistent with the neighbors. This duplex extends all the way through our yards. It looks into our yards. It gets rid of a yard and replaces it with a concrete pad. It has a 3-story carriage house, which all the other garages on that street are 1 story high. It is not matching the other houses. They reference the carriage house behind it. That's a historic building in Clintonville. We're proud of that building.
Just wind up. Down there.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm trying to cut you off in the middle of that.
That's fine, thank you.
Next. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Matt. I live at 205 West North Broadway, right next to this lot. I would just like to point out that it seems like there's an argument that's being made 2 ways, which is that number one, this is consistent with the character of the neighborhood, that there are many other duplexes in the neighborhood, and number 2, that there aren't enough, there's an inadequate supply of duplexes, and that this is necessary to provide affordable housing. I think it's not really been proven, and I'm actually quite skeptical that this will provide anything that's affordable less than the prices of the current duplexes or frankly single family homes that are currently in the neighborhood. I also don't think that it's consistent with other perhaps comparable properties that I don't know of any other duplexes in the neighborhood that also have a concrete pad, 6 parking spots, and a carriage house behind them. And I'd also like to point out that the point was made that the people that live next door, well, they may not like it, but they'll leave, and it'll be the next people won't be any the wiser, and they'll just accept it as the way it's always been. But that I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. We bought this house because we really love Clintonville neighborhood, and
we wanted to join the community,
and we want to enjoy it for a long time. And frankly, I think it also implies that that it does devalue the property next door, and that having a duplex that extends far back into the yard, where the yard would be or should be, does intrude on our yard, looking down over it, as well as the carriage house. And I think that there's an implicit acknowledgement of that when you say that the next people they just won't know the difference when we leave, which we're not planning to. But anyways, thank you for Commission for hearing us.
Being thoughtful.
Thank you for taking the time to come here. Keep it on this side, anyone more, raise your hand. Yeah,
Hi, my name is Jim Bakewell. I've lived in Clintonville 48 years. I used to deliver up and down West North Broadway. To say that I have not seen my fair share of traffic and seen some of the things that are unpleasant along Milton at a young age. Regardless, I just feel that this really doesn't fit what's going on. You're basically creating 3 rental properties, if I'm correct. And based on maybe what's assumed as the input of money that would cost to make this whole thing work, if it were approved, I'm just curious how long. You're saying possibly $1,250 a month. And I think that's a far, I mean, I don't think you're even within 25%, or probably missing 25% added to that. And if you were charging $1,250 a month, and you had, what, 3 opportunities, so what, $3,750 a month? I mean, if it's an investment opportunity, $3,750 for, 12 months a year, I don't see where you're ever gonna be able to turn over your money in 20 years at that kind of rent. I just find that a little far-fetched. I would think you'd have to be anywhere close to 2,000. I mean, there's 1,200 square foot houses in Clintonville that people want to charge $2,500 a month. I don't see how that's relevant, how it would actually be a good investment for you to only charge that kind of money. I mean, there's 2-bedroom, a stretch of 2-bedroom brick condo houses on Orchard Lane where I live that are like $1,600, $1,700 a month that have been there forever. And for you to put in, I mean, I don't know the total cost, somewhere close to $1 million invested in that, I just don't see how you could charge $1,250. I think that's just absolutely crazy to think that you could get away with that and actually make your investment return. I don't think it's gonna fit, and I think there's way too many safety concerns. As pointed out by many of my neighbors, the amount of runners, walkers, there's no sidewalks. You talked about putting one in. There's already an existing bike lane at the light to create more safety. With the amount of cars that you're trying to move in and out of that garage, which I'm not the best at reading this, but you're talking like 6, maybe 8 cars. Well, I'm just saying, what if are you gonna allow for people to, or is it definitely just gonna be 2 people and 2 bedrooms? Like one each, or what if there's a married couple and a friend that are renting out the 2-bedroom side of the duplex? There could be multiple more cars. Where there's gonna park. It's not gonna happen on price, and that street's already colluded with parking on both sides. There'd be really nowhere to park, so I don't know how you can turn that around. I don't think it fits it just doesn't fit a true Clintonville nature. If you were really doing an investment and you were looking to make money, you would build a single family house. You revert to the lot size and there's not a lot of houses. How can you make 3 dwellings on something that's barely enough to make a single or even just a duplex?
Thank you. Any more over here? Going on. Okay, let's start over here. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Brenda Arnold, and I live at 185 West North Broadway, which is directly across the street from Milton. And I'm heartbroken that my adult children probably can never afford to live in Clintonville, and then I understand that. And I'm also really heartbroken that you're telling us that you want a 3 housing unit across the street because you want to make housing affordable. I don't buy that. You're gonna charge prices that get you back on your investment, and I know what Clintonville's worth. I wish all the property values were lower. As a homeowner in Clintonville, I've lived here for 30 years, and I bought my house for less than $70,000. I've seen prices escalate, and I think Clintonville's really great and beautiful, and I don't think for a second that anybody comes here with altruistic motives about affordable housing. I don't. I think that I've seen so many accidents on Milton and West North Broadway from bikers and cars and people with children. I've seen a motorcycle guy pit and land in the alley, like right in front of my house, and we had to call the SWAT. It's terrible. So the fact that somebody might want to bring in, as you said, 6 additional cars into the neighborhood, I want to see it grow. I was all for the left turn, lane on East North Broadway to West North Broadway. I think progress is important, and I would love to make it Clintonville affordable like I did have it 30 years ago, but this isn't the answer. If you want to build a one-family home, super, but for you to try to tell me that you're wanting to make a 3-family home or investment so that it's affordable, I'm not buying that. I don't think that's the way we want to go. It makes me upset.
Thank you. Others?
Not so fun.
Yep, yes, sir.
My name is Greg Nutter. I live at 196 West North Broadway, right across the street from the Century Lot. We've been there 26 years, okay? And there's a couple things I want to address. I'm all for development on that property, okay? I think a single-family home would be great, okay? I'm not opposed to a double. I'm not in favor of it. I didn't hear the comment when somebody asked the question about, is there going to be a basement?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe it's a small basement, not a full basement.
On the duplex? Okay. And is there a 3rd story on the duplex? So the window that's on the front is just for attic space, is that correct? Okay. Couple things, and Brendan mentioned about the accident and the safety issue. I realize that the bike path is under negotiation to be relocated, okay, but that's still a bike lane. A lot of people use that, okay? There is no drainage at that corner. So when it rains heavily, like on our corner, it just floods, okay? Now on the east side of that intersection, there are 2 drains there, but that doesn't help, the west side. Accidents that happen there, they've torn through the monument in front of our house. They've torn through the bus stop in front of that property. They've ended up where your porch would be, okay, at that property. I think the design looks great. I think it fits in with the character of the neighborhood. I'm not opposed. I am opposed to the carriage house. The building behind it is not referenced as a carriage house, for one. Okay, it is a historical building, okay, and it's always been there. If you're any familiar with Clintonville at all, because I realize you live in Grandview, okay, Grandview's different than Clintonville, okay, obviously.
I do all the property here.
Okay, but the fact is that Clintonville is unique in a lot of ways. It's very diverse, and I think that there's opportunity for growth there, and I'm all in favor of that. But as far as I understand, I don't think there's ever been a structure on that property. And I was told by the city that they thought that maybe one time back in the 30s, but I'm understanding that there's never been a building there, so you have to put all that structure into that property. So, and making an affordable rent, it's not going to happen, because I'll tell you, the rentals the duplexes across the street from me on Milton, they're duplexes, and it looks like almost the same size of what you're going to build on that property. Okay, there's not just 2 people living there. There's 5 people, 6 people, 8 people, which means not 2 cars, it means 8 cars. Where are they going to park? On Brighton? Okay, so you need to consider that.
You need to wind down.
Okay, you just need to consider the value. I'm all in favor for a single-family house with a garage, possibly a carriage house on top of it, but duplex, and having 3 families on that property, I do not like the idea that it's going to be rentals. Condos,
We're
maybe.
building
Okay, let they get their talk, you'll get your talk.
Okay.
I will give you
If it's condos, more power to it, 'cause I like more homeowners on that street than rentals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sandy Simbro, Orchard Lane.
Sandy Simbro, Orchard Lane. Unfortunately, I've lived long enough to remember 1979. Diane, I trust you do too. At that time,
14.5% interest.
At that time, a study was done on West North Broadway. Original zonings, that subdivision was annexed to the city in 1910. In 1923, the first zoning code was established. And in North Broadway was 80% residential, 20% mixed, single and double family. R3 district was established for the entire street, taking the least intense and majority use. Existing doubles became non-conforming use, and only one double has been added to the street to virtually fill every lot. Oh, wait a minute, that two-family was added in 1965. The only other time there has been any change on North Broadway, on the west North Broadway, is the townhouses that are west of Kroger. And that when that was done, it was, that must have been about the time that this happened. And they said, that won't happen again. There was comment on ownership patterns. Well, it's really interesting because in 1979, the ownership pattern was that people stayed there for, I lost track of my years, but I've been in Orchard Lane 53 years. And you've been on Brighton for how many years?
15.
And how many years you've been on Broadway?
6.
26.
26.
26. So basically that's like a generation. I've done 2 generations. And in my 53 years on Orchard Lane, the people behind me have been the same family. It's a 3rd generation, same family. People don't leave Clintonville if they can. I believe there's another Orchard Lane resident here that is 3rd generation, 4th generation.
My
grandpa's house.
Yeah, my grandfather got it from the gentleman that built it.
So there is a lot of staying power. But anyway, there is no turning back. If we allow a carriage house on North Broadway, there will be one on Orchard Lane, there will be one on Richards, there will be one on Arden, because you guys already given all kinds of height variances. I cannot believe the size of the garage is going up, and the ones that, oh no, we don't have any plumbing. Yes, we do. Also, one of the things, the soap factory, the carriage house to the south was never a residence. It is adaptive reuse to become a residence. It was, a business for many, many years. Anyway, I encourage you to build a nice single family R3, and then everybody will be happy.
Thank you. Yes, in the back.
Sarah Snyder, 97 Brighton Road, and I'm a former District 2 Commissioner. And again, in the 70s, I want to comment on this idea that the zoning was just arbitrarily done in the area. So again, in the 70s, the area immediately south used to allow for the demolition of single-family homes and 4-unit apartment buildings to be put in their place. So what happened was those single-family homes all around Clinton-Como Park and all through the neighborhood started coming down. Investors came in, bought them, tore them down, put up 4 units, and the housing stock became endangered. The property values in the area became destabilized because you didn't know what you were buying next to. You bought next to a family home, and all of a sudden it's an apartment building. So in 1977, that whole area was downzoned to put a halt to what they were seeing. And I just want to caution that we don't see that kind of thing again. If we start building a carriage house here, what stops every other duplex in the area from tearing down their garage and putting up a carriage house in the back of their duplex?
Thank you. Yes.
My name is Pat Sauer, and we own the house south of you, the barn, the historical building. It's over 120 years old. I've never heard it called a carriage house until this plan came about. I thought it was just a room over a garage, but it wasn't. It's not a living space over there. I do love the design that you made. I do not want that condensed, that area filled up with 3 living units. I don't want to look out the window and see a house, 3 stories high, 10 feet away. The property lines, our house used to be an apple orchard barn. All that was an apple orchard. So, you know, the lines were made over the years as that was changed from the soap factory to the Thomas Coach carriage and all the history behind it, but it's still, with all that they did, they still allowed a lot of green space right on the other side of that. I do have a concern about the heavy cars pulling out of that garage, and the turning. We've seen people have a little problem turning and miss our building, and this would bring a lot more. It just, and you know, even though I love your design, I don't like it on that spot. Maybe the double I would be more acceptable to, even though it is zoned single. I think the proof of hardship is such a big thing that's not been proved, that you knew when you bought the lot that it was single family, and that just to say that it's a small lot and that's a hardship is not, to me, a very good answer. It's a financial decision to buy that lot and to want to build 3 units. That there's not, one of your first statements was we wanted to see a different kind of situation here in Clintonville. There's so many families who want to try something else, but you don't live here. I mean, you own the condo here, but you live in Grandview Heights. So I really don't have a big concern what happens in Grandview Heights on what kind of building somebody puts on a lot, because I don't live there. I mean, there's some concern, but you know what I mean. But so it's an investment, and maybe just change the plans. You seem to be considered on a lot of things, but I think people do. We live on Amazon. We lived in Clintonville 42 years. There's somebody built a split level on Amazon years ago, and the neighbors still hate it. We lived in this house, our house, for 37 years, and the neighbors still talk about it. Why would somebody build that split level right there? You know, how can you still be talking about that? But everybody's lived there so long. So anyway, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else who hasn't spoken want to speak? Yes.
Yeah. My name is Chris, and I live at 205 West North Broadway. I've only lived in Clintonville for 7 months. What did I say, 207? Oh, no, I live in that. Yeah. No, 207. Yeah, I lived there 7 months. So I did buy the house with the intention of it being kept in the family for future generations. I don't agree that people buy and leave, right? As has been stated, I do agree with your comments that you are announcing that you're acknowledging the hardship by the next person wanting to know. I thought that was a really good comment. I would just ask that before this is approved by the commission, that you take into consideration the concerns that have been raised here tonight. And is there any precedence in Clintonville where this type of density has been approved on a single lot? This lot isn't even big enough for a single resident, let alone a duplex and an apartment above the garage. So this is not only enough sense. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. And just to be clear what this is the Zoning and Variance Committee, the Clintonville Area Commission. We make a recommendation to the commission. None of us are the elected commissioners. The commissioners vote on the official recommendation of the committee of the city, but that's still a recommendation, and the city council are the decision makers. Just so everyone's clear what our role is here. Does anyone who hasn't spoken who wants to speak yet? Okay, then now I will give last chance. You've already spoken. I open up to okay, you have the floor. You have the floor. The applicants have the floor.
We certainly appreciate all the comments, and we certainly are listening to the concerns. We also very much appreciate the support. I'm not going to get into the rent and is it financially viable for us or not. Of course we wouldn't be doing this, but if it did make sense financially. But Liz has done this before. She's pretty experienced in this, and she wouldn't be doing this if she didn't think it made sense. They are going to be condos. That's the intention. They're thinking about keeping one for themselves or for one of the children when they come home, that kind of thing. Come back home to Columbus or whatever. So we're not looking at a rental situation here. Giving the traffic patterns, I mean, I think, 6 more cars with an average, what do we say, 2,600 cars a day? I think the impact is gonna be pretty minimal. And, we're not all leaving at the same time. It's always hard when you have a vacant lot, and you've looked at this vacant lot for a long time and now somebody wants to build something on it and you think, well, that's where I walk my dog and, here it is. But we do both feel very passionately that, building a little bit of a smaller unit that, when your son graduates and he's looking for something, that, he can get into Clintonville, in that sense. So we feel very passionately about that for these like first-time home buyers who, can't afford the $450, $550 starting price. From a financial standpoint, I will say, a double is much more financially makes much more sense than a single family. You just look at the numbers, it does. You'll just have to trust us on that one. But, Liz, do you want to talk about your?
Yeah, where to start? Yeah, I really do appreciate everybody's comments, and it's interesting to hear stories and to be neighbors, maybe. I've built, as Julie mentioned, and she has as well, a number of infill projects. People think they were always there once they're built. I look at other people's houses sometimes and like, oh, they didn't do this or they didn't do that or whatever. They didn't do something that to me they still read as new homes that don't fit in quite right. I'm really dedicated to the architecture to make it feel like it's something that's always been there and just really blends in seamlessly. I appreciate the view issue. I'm a big view person too. You think about, what somebody's going to develop this lot. I don't know if it will be us ultimately or not, but somebody will. And so, how do you make it as nice as it can be? Again, I can't make decisions for anybody else, but you could look at cars parked on a lot, or you could look at a structure that is nicely designed. And I guess I would choose the latter. I would choose open space if I had my druthers, as I think you probably would. But I'd rather look at all the cars are going to be enclosed and not visible from the street in this design, which I think is a plus for the neighborhood. Yeah, all I can say is that the effort here is to make something that would be nice. And it would be additive. And we are building, there's additional expense you have to go through to build them as condos, because you have to get separate taps for water. And so that's the plan, is to do that so that they can be able to be sold. And they're less expensive only because they're smaller, right? So instead of building a 3,000 square foot single family home, you build 2 1,500 square foot single family homes, and each one's more affordable. So we're not claiming to be home port or anything like that. And the rent that I was talking about was just for the carriage house because it's smaller, so it would be a lower price point for the project. But anyway, we have Victor's got his mom may need a place to stay here. She doesn't live here now, but I think in the future she may need a place to stay. We got 2 younger kids who I would like to stay in town. And Clintonville's a lovely neighborhood. They I'm sure would like to live here. So I'm just looking forward and looking at what feels like it could be a positive project for the neighborhood. But as I said, we're not married to it. It's an opportunity if it interests you, right?
Thank you. We've done with the public comment. It's 9:23, and I'm trying to keep things. Everyone had their fair shot. Everyone had their fair shot to have one space. So we're just going to move on to questions from the committee now. Do you have, does the committee have any more questions for them, or do you want to have discussion on their set? Okay, discussion. Then we need to get discussion. We need a motion to approve on the floor. Motion to approve is submitted. A motion to approve the variance. The variances as requested.
Are we doing all at once or one at a time?
As a council, I guess that's the control of the person who wants to make the motion.
I would prefer to vote on the variance.
do we need to put?
Does that make sense, given the fact that elimination of any one of the variances might distract?
No, I said that is the control of the person who makes the motion. So whoever wants to make it, and if you want to make a motion
I
to
would
approve.
like to make a motion to approve item number 1 variance on this list of matters.
Do I have a second? Okay, now this is open for discussion.
The reason I'm asking this one individually is because I don't think I have a problem with the duplex, I have a problem with the carriage house. So some of these, well, yeah, I'll vote for, some of these, no. That's why I'm asking them to be voted upon individually.
That's fine. I totally respect the person, y'all have, committee members, y'all have the right to make the motions you want to make. So anyone else have?
Then that would be where we would be putting a condition of the permeable surface, correct? On that variance. And you were still okay with that?
I guess to your point, like, is there a specific variance listed here that addresses the carriage house? It seems like there are only.
Well, I can't remember the proof to allow a duplex in a single family residence. I mean, that's no. I'm put the kibosh on carriage house.
And one thing we can do, we're issuing our recommendations to the committee, to the commission, so you can say, one thing you also, you understand, we put our reasons in the minutes that go to the commission so that, and so those reasons are more important than the actual votes, because commissioners have their own opinions, which is what they're elected to have.
So what happens if, let's say, an applicant comes back with a different
You
design? We can ask.
You can ask that we table it and come back to another time if you wanted to. If we vote to approve or deny the application, then it goes to the commission, and then you'd have to deal with them, or they'd have to send it back to us for us to revisit it. Well,
If it's a different project, so to speak, if you were to disapprove it tonight, a different project could come back, right?
Right,
You can't bring exactly the same back and say, no, really, try again. I want a
Okay.
different outcome. You can't do that, but you could change the design and bring something back.
Are we committed to do that, or is?
Let me see.
So my concern here is one of the things that we've tried to do as this committee is to respect the opinions of the immediate adjacent neighbors very heavily. From what I'm hearing tonight, every one of the immediate adjacent neighbors that has come to speak to us in person and written in has been in opposition to this project as it stands. One of the things we always try to encourage developers and the neighbors to do is get together and try to work out compromises prior to moving forward. I find it works better if they take it away and try to come to compromises so you don't have bad feelings between the neighbors and the developers. I would strongly encourage that at this point, hearing all this opposition, that the applicant work with the neighbors to try to come to some resolution and acceptable condition for the developer and the neighbors.
And we can still go through and vote. I guess the problem with doing it 9 votes is the way things work. If you want to reopen it, someone who voted against it has to reconsider it.
And sometimes I think it's helpful if we can maybe share with you what our big concerns are.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Because then if you decide to table, you've got a jumping off point, especially if you can get together with the neighbors. But you have a jumping off point as far as the way we see.
It's not figured out how all the commissioners. There's a few of you.
We're not commissioned. None of us are commissioned.
I'm sorry.
There are a few commissioners.
We're the sausage makers.
Okay.
We are, our job is not necessarily to reflect the community. Our job is to hash through the issues so that when it gets to the commissioners will not spend an hour and a half on this.
Sure.
In fact, the meeting starts at 7 and the library kicks them out at about 5 till 9. So they will not spend, our job is to help define the issues for them so that they may look at this in 15 minutes or half an hour. So we are not a representative body here. we are a technical body, then that's, so it's, if you want to go to the commissioners, we should proceed to vote, and you can always. Or we can come back to the next
I don't know, the
month
bodies
and
that I've
have-
been before in the past have kind of intimated how they're feeling about a project before a vote, so the applicant can decide, which I don't know if that's not the habit, and that's all right, but.
I didn't hear that. Do you want to say, no, do you want to go around and give our opinions, General, and we'll walk around and I'll go last.
Yeah.
And he'll take notes, so these will be in the minutes and the commissioners can see them.
My concerns were, the establishment of a hardship really wasn't made. The density and the precedent, to me, are big in this application. The character of the neighborhood, that I kept hearing that over and over. There are other duplexes, there are other carriage houses, but not on the same lot. So that kind of just, there's no character of the neighborhood that goes with that. Yeah, that's it. But I think the design is beautiful. I appreciate the effort and the care that went into reflecting the character of the neighborhood, but those are my big, huge issues.
Yeah, if it is a duplex versus a single family house, there should be no parking pad, the garage should be a garage.
I'm absolutely opposed to a carriage house residence over garage. I think it's inappropriate and inconsistent with Clintonville. I also agree that it's an attractive design. I'm a little torn on the duplex, but willing to consider that if it came back.
I don't really like the idea of having a duplex. From listening to everyone and looking at hardships, and I'm not comfortable with that. It's pretty, but I don't like carriage house. There. Isn't that clear?
Personally, I like everything about it. I would be in favor of the carriage house and the duplex. However, noting the strong opposition from your immediate neighbors, I would vote against it because of that. But I think if you modify the carriage house to a garage, or keep the duplex, you might be able to find some compromise. Good luck.
I think my main concern is also the opposition of your immediate neighbors. You don't want to have you build a property there and then there be bad feelings between the neighbors and the residents of your property. So I really encourage you to try to work with the neighbors and come to some kind of agreement on the layout of the lot that everybody can be happy with. I have concerns with the reduction in green space because we are already in that neighborhood in an area that's been targeted by the City of Columbus and EPA and Project Blueprint Columbus for drainage issues. You comment that you're required to take any runoff water and take it to the street. Our storm sewers in the streets are already overloaded. We're in an area that the city was giving out rain barrels to help alleviate the issues with the storm sewers. So to reduce the amount of permeable surface area and to drive all that runoff to the streets is a major concern to already overloaded old storm sewers in the area. Those are my main concerns.
Yeah, I would say I agree with Michael. Talk to your neighbors, make an agreeable plan, and whatever you build, the carriage house is definitely a no. Go with the traditional garage because a 1.3 acre lot with 3 dwellings is just too much.
I would agree with most of what you've heard already. I think there is a great example of duplexes in the neighborhood, and I personally wouldn't be opposed to a duplex. I like the idea of having more opportunities for people living home. generally will side with, you know, your immediate neighbor stuff, and if they are opposing it, it's hard for me to support it. And I also don't understand the hardship.
I guess I wouldn't call this affordable housing. I think that's a technical, where I may say less unaffordable. Might be a better, might be a way. That is what the point is to make sense. And they're always, renting a whole house is always going to be more expensive than renting a third of a lot. And that's what the point of this is. And from the message I've been hearing from the city and even from the mayor, I think I've only said once, and maybe this as far to Commissioner Crowell as I am right now. But I think the one message he got is that he didn't want to hear people say that apartments needed to go somewhere else. That reasoning is not going to be accepted by the city for much longer, if it's going to be accepted at all. That's the message I'm hearing from city council members and from the mayor's office, and I think I think they are specifically, they don't want people to say put an apartment somewhere else. It's not right in my neighborhood, because it's always a better fit someplace else. I live on this street, which I know is wider than that street, but we have at the end of the street, we have, I think there are 4 plexes or 6 plexes. We have six townhouses down the road in a lot that goes in. We have a whole bunch of duplexes. And this street still feels to me like a single family street. I think it's a 3-story house right across the street from me. I don't know if it has a working attic, but it's a big house. But again, I know the street is kind of like the weird buffer between further south and north.
Weird buffer. Weird buffer.
Weird buffer. From the smaller lots to the really big lots. I try to acknowledge that I understand that it's different when you're living in when you have smaller lots the whole way down. Also, this is a buildable lot, and I think they are entitled to put a building there. Absolutely, and a lot of these variances would apply whether it's a duplex or a single family home. And I don't think the city, I think the city would, I do think I like the whole project. I think especially if you deal with the permeables, the city is dealing with the traffic issues. You're way far back from the corner. I really hope that soon that this isn't the bike path anymore. But I think I hope by the time you finish it won't be the bike path. But those are my main reasons, and my main reasons why I would support it. I do think if you decide to table it, one other person to talk to is Brian Pfeiffer, who I've CC'd almost everything I sent you, he's CC'd on because he's the commissioner for the district. And I would get a hold of him and speak with him, because he's supposed to be he is the representative of that area. He's the one who speaks officially for that little part of Clintonville to the commission, and then the commission speaks officially. So I thank you for your creativity in coming up with this. My sense is that what you heard, you want to table this.
I actually would like you to vote on it, because as I mentioned before, if there's just not an appetite for a 3-unit development on the lot, we'd be bringing back something anyway, so it doesn't really hurt to have it on the record.
If you send an email to Chair Botero, the commission, and said, I don't want to vote next week, I'm sure he would take you off the agenda.
I guess just what's the difference though? If to answer the single family home, then it doesn't really hurt for you to turn down the 3-unit, right?
Well, the question is, do you have this application? Would you file a new application?
We'd have to just start all over again.
We would amend the application.
And I'm sure we could find a procedural way to send this back to us. Maybe we put it on the commission's agenda and ask them to remand it to the committee, if that's what they want to do. So, but once we send it to the commission, it's they have to send it back, but my guess is, and I can't speak for them, my guess is if you went to them and said, please send it back to the committee, because we want, and
You want to amend things.
you want to amend things to come back, then they would, I would guess that they would say yes.
I think I'm really not understanding the
So,
process.
They can amend it, I think, but once it goes to them, they have to send it back to us,
Right.
is what I understand. So,
We're
they-
here every month.
So if you, okay.
Any
Sorry.
change
I
you
really
make,
just, yeah.
any change you make to your application would require you to come back to this committee.
I think they changed things between the committee and the commission. That's part of why we have 8 days now, is so that they can adjust between that's expressly why they.
Any changes between the CAC.
Can you explain what would happen if they table it? Like, I think they don't understand what's the easier route.
They could go back then, speak to the neighbors, work with the
And
commissioner.
then go back and try and get a
come back
positive
here
vote.
with either the same application or an amended application.
I mean, the city, from a variance process versus.
We have a commissioner who's raising her hand.
So I think one process that could happen that hasn't been acknowledged yet is that there could be a no vote tonight. There could be conversations between the applicant and neighbors and Commissioner Piper, and then it could still come before the area commission next week and pass, despite having not passed the zoning committee.
Correct.
Not to usurp your wonderful expertise, and we value you so much, but that is a possibility as well.
We can say no. A no vote means they still vote. If we vote no, it doesn't mean it dies in committee. Like
It's not legislative. Yeah.
But are they permitted to vote on a different application from that which was presented?
They can.
Yes.
Yes.
You can tweak this as much as you want before you go to.
As long as the city considers it CV 23012, which is your application number, they can do whatever they.
And we could wait till April, May. We don't have to vote next week.
Our vote is a motion before the commission. So whatever we vote is a motion before the commission.
Okay, that's the piece that was not clear.
And they can change it, they can change it.
You can, at that, you can change it. At that, but our vote, if we took it now, would be a motion before the commission next week.
Regardless of what our vote, unless we table it, if we give a yes or a no, it goes
That's
to
the
them.
motion.
It goes to
If
them.
you table it, it goes to them and
If
they.
you table it, it stays here.
It stays here, you come back to them.
If we vote on it, it's a motion before that.
If we vote on the actual merits of the application.
It's the process if you're gonna change. You know what I'm saying?
If you have an inclination to change anything about your application, my feeling is it's better to table it.
Because if it's gonna be big changes, then they tend to not wanna deal with the bigger change. It's easier for them to deal with, but they will deal with it. They will, it's their discretion. Once it gets there, I can't speak for them. It's their discretion. If they decide they want, that we vote no and you decide to only go with the duplex and they can vote on that, they can amend it to say that would be their discretion. They can do anything with the motion once it gets to them if they want, but they have to have 5 votes to do it. And one thing I've learned is never try to guess where the 5 votes will go.
So it stays here until you make a motion,
Until we
pass a motion
You
of some sort.
table it next month or whatever, whenever you're ready to come back, whether it's March or April or whatever.
You send an email to me and I put it on the agenda
back
for
on
that
the
time. We just file a motion to take it off the table and it comes off the table. That's how it would come. And I would want it to be I want to know at least a week and a half in advance so that technically we don't have to put out notices again, but there's no way I'm not gonna not send out notices again on something like this. So we would send out notices again.
But the commissioner in this district gets paid big bucks to do this kind of work with you and the neighbors. That's why the thing's up.
As chair, I get 10 times that.
Can I just say, we would be happy as the most immediate neighbors, I guess, only speaking for ourselves, to discuss further and come up with a solution that's you know, everyone is amenable to.
Do you think you can come up with a solution in 8 days? That's the question, because if you think you can do
I'm not
it
an
in 8
architect,
days.
so.
So if you can do it in 8 days, I'd say, let's go to the commissioner. If you can't do it in 8 days, I would say table it and come back here.
Well, that's not necessarily true, they come out to the commission, not be here until like June.
Yeah, that's
So, I
true.
mean, you can take as much time between now and the time you go to the commission, talk to the neighbors to get it done and not come back here at all. Or you can table it and come back here.
I'll just say, we understand, you know, you never make everybody happy.
Right.
And that's why this board is here, you know, to assess, you know.
And what, in my opinion, I can't, at a motion to table, that's, everyone gets to vote, you need 5 votes. My opinion on motions to table is, you are entitled to a yes or a no on this. That's the one thing you're entitled to when you walk in here. I think if you want a yes or no, we give you a yes or no and it moves on. We don't bottle stuff up here. Yeah.
I am still just a little lost on the process, but, I trust you.
I'm recommending she table.
Okay. Therefore, I think if it gets this is the place to deal with complicated stuff first. The commission, you may get 20 minutes. Every once in a while they go for an hour on something like this, but it depends on what else is on you're on the agenda with everything else that's going on. So if you want to table it, you can table it, and I would strongly recommend talking with Commissioner Pfeiffer, and you can talk with other commissioners. You just can't round robin them. But Brian is the person you would need to speak.
I didn't realize that was his role, so that's great.
It's very helpful, yeah, have that.
And his job is to liaison and set up meetings and get things. So do you want us to file, do you want someone to make a motion to table?
Yes, can we request that you table the second?
Okay. Do I have a motion to table? Oh, you do it, I said, no objection to withdrawing the motion no objection to withdrawing the motion on the first item. Okay, now do we have a motion to table? Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved by a 9-0 vote. And so this will not go before the Clintonville Area Commission. Our next meeting is March 29th, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. here, not 8 p.m. We're only 8 p.m. because of Ash Wednesday. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All opposed? Any favor?